This is the first topic for the contract of sale of goods. That is, you have to know the definition, what is a contract of sale of goods, and what are the elements important in order to form a valid binding contract for the sale of goods. By the end of this topic, these are the outcomes that you need to have. That is the first one, the definition. You have to know what is the definition of a contract of sale of goods. And then what are the elements in order to form a contract of sale of goods. So these are the two things which you must have at the end of this topic. Now we come to the definition of a contract of sale of goods.
For the contract of sale of goods, the main act that we refer is the Sale of Goods Act 1957.
According to Section 4 Clause 1 of this Act, a contract of sale of goods is defined as a contract whereby the seller transfers or agrees to transfer the property in goods to the buyer for a price. Thus, by virtue of this definition, under Section 4 Clause 1 of the Sale of Goods Act, a contract of sale is that it is an agreement of the seller to transfer ownership of the goods to the buyer, and the consideration for this agreement is the price which will be paid by the buyer. So, the main purpose or the main objective of a contract of sale of goods is that the transfer of ownership of the goods from the seller to the buyer. Now, I am going to explain to you about what are the elements which are important in order to form a valid contract of sale of goods. With reference to the Section 4 Clause 1 just now, there are three main elements of the contract of sale of goods. First, there must be goods available. So meaning under this contract, the subject matter of the contract is the goods. And then second, there must be the transfer of ownership from the seller to the buyer. And third, there must be price as the consideration for the contract.
Property in goods here means ownership. Under the contract of sale of goods, there is a transfer of ownership from the seller to the buyer.
Alright, now we come to the first element, that is goods. There must be goods available as the subject matter of a contract of sale. Goods are defined under Section 2 of the Sale of Goods Act 1957. According to this definition, every kind of movable property, sebarang harta ataupun barang yang boleh alih, can become a subject matter of a contract of sale of goods. Money cannot be considered as goods under the contract of sale. Growing crops, grass, and anything which is attached to or forming part of land cannot be considered as goods unless they are agreed to be severed, dipisahkan, dikeluarkan atau diproses from the land before the sale or under the contract of sale. So this is the meaning of goods by virtue of Section 2 of the Sale of Goods Act 1957. These are the example of movable property. By virtue of Section 2 of the Sale of Goods Act, these movable property are considered as goods. All these are immovable property. Therefore, they are not goods. Money which being used as currencies are not considered as goods. However, all currencies, they are considered as goods, and therefore, they can become the subject matter of a contract of sale of goods.
According to Section 2 of the Sale of Goods Act 1957, things that attach to the land or growing on land are not considered as goods. For example, the growing crops like paddy and vegetables, grass and trees which are still growing on land cannot become the subject matter of a contract of sale. Hence, the fruits like durian which are still growing on trees, they are not to be regarded as goods. Things that are forming part of land, such as sandstone, gravel, and even minerals and gold, cannot be considered as goods. These things cannot become the subject matter of a contract of sale of goods. As understood before, things that are grown on land cannot be considered as goods. However, if they are agreed to be severed before the sale, the things can be regarded as goods. For example, paddy, which is still growing, is not goods. However, after being harvested and processed into rice, then it became goods. Things which are still forming part of land, they are not goods, unless they are severed from the land. For example, gold which are still in the land, they are not goods. However, if the gold been mined and processed to become gold bar or jewelries, then the gold bars or jewelries are goods. Similarly, the sand and gravels which are still laying on land, they are not goods. However, if they being processed and packed into certain quantity, then they can become goods. Under a contract of sale of goods, one of the elements is the transfers or agrees to transfer property in goods. Transfers here means sale. Agrees to transfer means agreement to sell. When there is a sale, it means that at the time of contracting, the ownership of the goods passed to the buyer immediately. With regard to agreement to sell, it means that at the time of contracting, the ownership of the goods will not pass to the buyer. The ownership will pass to the buyer in a future time or after certain condition has been met.
And then the agreement to sell becomes a sale if the future time which has been promised by the seller ended, or when the condition of the sale has been fulfilled. For example, when the birthday cake is ready, it means that the condition of the sale has been fulfilled or the future time was ended. Therefore, the ownership of the cake passes to the buyer and the agreement to sell becomes a sale.
Property in goods means ownership or having title. Under a contract of sale of goods, only the person who has ownership or title upon the goods has the right to sell. If he is only having possession upon the goods and does not have any title, he cannot sell the goods to another.
Finally, the last element is the price. Under the contract of sale of goods, there must be price which has to be paid by the buyer. There must be an exchange between the goods and the money between the seller and the buyer. Otherwise, it is not a contract of sale of goods. For example, if there is an exchange between goods and goods, then it is not a contract of sale of goods. It is named as a contract of barter trading. In conclusion, a contract of sale of goods is a contract to transfer ownership of the goods from the seller to the buyer. And the consideration for that is the price which to be paid by the buyer. Thus, there are three main elements of the contract of sale of goods. First, there must be goods available. Second, there must be a transfer or agreement to transfer of the ownership of the goods to the buyer. And third, there must be a price.